Shalom from Israel. I'm Shira Sorko-Ram, reporting to you from Tel Aviv, and I want to welcome you to Israel Frontline, your guide to Israel and the Middle East. This is the conclusion of our four-part series about Islam. Today, we will examine the Muslim Brotherhood's self-proclaimed strategy to take over the United States of America. On the program today, what are the Muslim Brotherhood's stated goals? What is their five-phase plan for North America? And later, our panel of special guests will offer their perspective of the Brotherhood's progress in America. In 2004, an alert Maryland Transportation Authority police officer observed a woman wearing a hijab, a traditional Islamic garb, videotaping the support structures of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. The suspect and her driver, Ismail El-Barassi, were detained when police found there was a warrant issued for his arrest in Chicago involving a Hamas-linked case. When the FBI raided El-Barassi's home in Annandale, Virginia, they found 2 truckloads of Muslim Brotherhood archives in his hidden sub-basement. The documents confirmed what counterterrorism experts had previously suspected concerning the massive growth of various Muslim American groups in the United States, that nearly all of them are controlled by an Islamist organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, called Ikhwan in Arabic. As you will shortly see, the Ikhwan are categorically hostile to America's Constitution and freedoms. The documents make clear the Muslim Brotherhood's ultimate objective to implement Sharia law in America as another step towards establishing a global Islamic government, also known as a caliphate. One of the most significant documents found in the FBI raid was the Muslim Brotherhood's strategic plan for North America, entitled An Explanatory Memorandum on the General Strategic Goal for the Muslim Brotherhood Group. It was written by a member of the Board of Directors for the Muslim Brotherhood in North America and a senior Hamas leader, Mohammed Akram, and approved by the Brotherhood's Shura, which is an advisory council, in 1987. It establishes the mission of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. Mohammed Akram writes that Muslims are to establish Islamic rule in America by what he calls civilization jihadist process. According to him, Muslims must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and, quote, sabotaging, unquote, its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, meaning Muslims, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. The Muslim Brotherhood is a world Islamic organization working in 70 nations. It is not a body that expounds immediate terrorism, as do others like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Its strategy is different. However, its goal of creating an Islamic state in America and a world caliphate is the same as that of all other Islamist societies. Part of the Ikhwan's strategy for destroying the United States has been to convince U.S. leaders to do the Muslim Brotherhood's bidding by co-opting American leaders into believing an inaccurate understanding of Islam, and specifically the nature of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have thereby been able to manipulate U.S. leaders to enforce the Muslim Brotherhood's public version of Islam. In fact, the smooth-talking Ikhwan's operational skills have gained their operatives a constant access to the White House, the Defense Department, and the State Department, to mention a few. After 9/11, the George W. Bush administration was targeted with a multifaceted, sophisticated information operation designed to deceive national security officials about the true nature of the Islamic jihadist enemy that had attacked the homeland. Surrounded by Muslim Brotherhood voices, which told the president that true Islam had been hijacked by a tiny minority of extremists, President Bush responded with flinging U.S. military might against those who had physically carried out those attacks. Far more importantly, however, is that he was successfully deterred from investigating the belief system that inspired those hijackers by a blanket of Muslim Brotherhood taqiyya. Taqiyya is an Islamic legal term meaning deceitfulness permitted by Muslims to non-Muslims when advancing Islam. In other words, Islam says it's okay for a Muslim to lie to a non-Muslim. Taqiyya successfully smothered inquiry into the very Islamic doctrine that Al-Qaeda and the hijackers themselves declared to be their motivation. Although few realize it to this day, the crippling of the Bush administration's global war on terror response marked a crucial turning point in the U.S.'s ability to defend itself against Islamic jihad. Based on the Ikhwan's own documents, U.S. Islamic organizations were established as front groups by the Muslim Brotherhood and are waging a civilization jihad to destroy the Western civilization from within. Among the organizations actively involved in channeling illicit funding to Hamas was the Islamic Society of North America, or the ISNA, the largest of all their front groups. Even with the masses of evidence of danger posed by the Muslim Brotherhood available to successive administrations, its operatives are now positioned throughout America in local and national government branches. One of the Muslim Brotherhood documents found in the Al-Barasi treasure trove is a paper entitled Phases of the World Underground Movement Plan, specifying the 5 phases of the Ikhwan's movement to take over North America. In my new book, The Secret Radical Islamic Plot to Conquer America, I have listed the U.S. government website containing this information. The plan's author, Mohammed Akram, describes the 5 phases of the Brotherhood's goals. Here's a synopsis. Phase 1, discreet and secret establishment of leadership. First, the Muslim Brotherhood searched for young Muslim men to train for their civilization jihad to take over America. Training was done quietly and below the radar, mostly in their mosques and Islamic centers. At the same time, the Ikhwan spread the impression that their organization, and in fact Islam itself, is a moderate religion with amiable Islamic leaders, like all other religions. No public mention of revolutionary ideas at this stage. Phase 2. Here the Muslim Brotherhood began a gradual appearance on the public scene. They have already succeeded in achieving a great deal of their important goals, such as infiltrating various sectors of government, expanding religious institutions, collaborating with senior university scholars, and gaining public support and sympathy. Phase 3. an escalation phase with great success in utilizing mass media. Obvious to all who care to notice, most Western mainstream media fiercely defends Islam and labels those who warn against the danger of Islam as Islamophobics. Phase 4, currently in progress. The Ikhwan have been emboldened to publicly confront the government through pro-Islamic policies in universities driven by professors and Islamic student societies, and through political pressure on elected officials. As they realize success in changing the fabric of America, they have grown ever more aggressive, with such tactics as superfluous lawsuits against Christian and Jewish organizations, demanding laws to be enacted against Islamophobia. Israel is feeling the growing power of Islam in America by the expanding anti-Israel, anti-Semitic influence, causing many Jewish university students to be afraid to say anything in public debate arenas. There is an increasing pressure on church denominations to vote for BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. Commercial businesses are pressed to discontinue selling Israeli products, and so on. At the same time, Phase 4 includes training Muslims in the use of weapons, domestically and overseas, in anticipation of their 0 hour. Phase 5 encompasses the plot to seize the U.S. government, install Muslim government officials, and replace the American Constitution with Sharia law. This stage is to be implemented through elections or violent takeover when the time is ripe in the eyes of Islamic leaders. Yes, whether you believe it or not, the Muslim Brotherhood has laid out a phased plan to turn the USA into the American Islamic State ruled by Sharia law. Impossible? The Muslim Brotherhood not only believes it is possible, but certain to happen. We who are believers in Yeshua the Messiah know this is not God's will, but if we stand idly by, there's every chance it will happen. God is calling His people to stand in the gap through prayer and action. I will be right back with our special panel of guests to further discuss historical Islam, the Muslim Brotherhood, and their goal to conquer the world, and what we as believers can do about it.
One of the ways Maoz reaches out to Israelis is by supporting the Hebrew-speaking, Spirit-filled congregation Tiferet Yeshua in the heart of Tel Aviv. It is a place of intimate worship, corporate prayer, and powerful teaching for believers. But non-believers at the services always marvel at the love they receive from the people of God. Just as Yeshua said, through this love, they will know we are His disciples. Join us in reaching Tel Aviv and all of Israel.
If you want cutting-edge information about the end times, sign up for Shira Sorko-Ram's newsletter. I have been reading it for years, and as far as I'm concerned, it was the only one newsletter I would read having to do with end-time Bible prophecy right from Israel. It would be the Maoz newsletter. Sign up today.
Welcome back to Israel Frontline. Today, joining me in the studio are Mati Shoshani, Director of Operations for TBN Israel from Jerusalem, and Yosef Haddad, an Israeli Christian Arab pastor from Northern Israel. Thank you for joining me.
It's good to be here.
Since the FBI uncovered 2 truckloads of carefully laid out plans by the Brotherhood to take over the United States and establish Sharia law in America, as weird as that can sound, why does the present U.S. administration write on its White House petitions website the following: "We have not seen credible evidence that the Muslim Brotherhood has renounced its decades-long commitment to nonviolence"? Do you understand that question?
Yes.
Okay, what do you have to say about that?
On the most simple level, they obviously didn't look for evidence. If they didn't find any, they didn't look. And on a more deeper level, the interest level, the U.S. administration has reason not to believe that the Muslim Brotherhood is interested in violence. And the reasons are twofold. One, they supported the Muslim Brotherhood as the Egyptian government as an ally of the U.S., and that means money and Congress funding and so on and so forth. There are a lot of legal implications to that kind of support. And going and saying, yes, they are, internationally, they're our allies, and we're going to support them. We're going to send them,
So when Morsi came in
exactly.
to be president, then
they
the U.S. was their
backed
friend.
him. They backed him, and they continued with the U.S. financial aid, the U.S. military aid.
And until today.
Till today, well, they just recently sent back that or reestablished all that support for Assisi's government. But what's interesting is they can't separate the two. You can't say, yes, in the, internationally speaking, these are our allies, our friends, but domestically, they're a terrorist organization.
The Brotherhood is a terrorist organization.
You just couldn't say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's a big reason for that separation.
I would say that the American administration, they show tolerance toward Islam in general. Because of economic reasons, they need the Arabic petrol,
Yeah.
So, because I find the U.S. administration far more tolerant of Islam than they are of Christianity.
There's a case to be made for that. I mean, the U.S. could be considered, if you really follow the political discourse in America, there's a lot of Christian talk on it, but not much of it trickles down to actual practical things.
Yes.
It's sort of on the slogan level. But when it comes to Islam, like Yosef said, there's a lot of money involved. There are a lot of, I'll dare say something else. It's also the way the U.S. is perceived internationally. President Obama, Foreign Secretary Kerry, they're personally invested in events in the Middle East. And if they every other week switch who they support as an ally, it reflects negatively on them.
In other words, if they talk about Christianity, then that gives them less clout with the Muslims. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, if they switch their support or they remove their support of Islam or criticize Islam, it's an international problem. Christianity, in the eyes of the American, constituents, is a local, domestic issue. So it's two separate issues.
Also, it's time for the American administration to call the baby by his name. They have to face the truth. Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization. Their goal is well known. They want to take over the U.S. because they know that if they take over the U.S., then it will be very easy to conquer the whole world and to implement the Sharia law. And this is their goal.
It doesn't look to me like the U.S. government is going to change for the reasons that Mati's been talking about, economic and all of that in the Middle East. So the only other power, the only other source would be the church. What is the church doing? And even the Jewish community, what are they doing to combat this growth of Islam in America?
Unfortunately, the church is still sleeping, and a very small remnant understand God's heart and what's happening exactly in the spiritual realms. So there must be a wake-up call to the church before it becomes late. The church must stand in the gap for America. America was a blessing and still a blessing to Israel. The church has to stand in the gap like Esther in the Old Testament.
Yes.
She stood in the gap for the Jewish people, and she endangered herself to rescue the Jewish people. If she would not do that, we would not have the Messiah come through the Jewish people.
I think the problem is a bit more complicated, and I'll try and explain. When you look at the Middle East, Islam is tied very tightly to the countries themselves. In other words, if the U.S. or a large organization, a large church in the U.S., you go after Islam, you're actually directly targeting countries. And that's very problematic on a diplomatic level for the U.S. to come and say, oh, you know, the policies of Sunni Islam is wrong or are wrong, or, you know, or whatever it is. It's not just an attack on a religion. If they say Christianity, for instance, there's no one country that's going to come up and say, hey, you're attacking me, I'm offended. No one's going to say that.
Right.
You say Islam, bang, you know, the Saudis are
Yes.
you know, they're angry about it, they're demanding an apology and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it's really, the church sort of has to be able to make or willing to take a public stand and say these people, and it's a lot of people, are doing things that are against our beliefs as
Right.
Americans.
I think this is a faith thing again. The Bible says that the God of Israel is the true God. Now, even in the Palestinian situation, you have Palestinians versus Israel and Israel versus Palestinians. I believe from the biblical standpoint, from God's standpoint, it's the God of the Jewish people and the Christians, the God of Israel, versus the God of Islam, Allah. Because if Yeshua said that he's coming back to the Mount of Olives, right? He's coming back to the Mount of Olives, then is he coming back to an Islamic people? Why do the Palestinians, why do the Muslims want the Mount of Olives? Why do they want the place where the Jewish temple was? See, this is an Islamic, Christian, Islamic, Jewish issue, and people are not looking at it in that way.
Isn't that the essence of every religious discussion? I'm right, you're wrong, my God is the real God and your God is the false God. So people don't understand, it's sort of not on the table anymore. This extends into, you know, the relationships between countries. When a Muslim country looks at the, you know, their foreign relations, they look at it through the eye of Islam, through the you know, promoting their religious ideology.
Yes.
Christian countries no longer do that because they're, for the most part, not religious anymore. But
Right.
if you look at the Muslim countries, they're openly religious. They're governed by religious authorities.
Yes.
So and they promote those agendas.
Yeah.
They're saying, yes, our religion is a true religion. You're infidels,
Right.
and we will convert you to our religion.
So the Christians sit quietly by. Now, on the internet, there's some interesting things that I've noticed lately. For instance, one example was of an activist. What can we do in America to shut down some of these Islamic outreaches? You know, they have like, let's have a meeting in the community of our town or our suburb. And so the Muslims invite the public to come, and then they get into the victimization, Islamophobia, and so, you know, and so that they get really brainwashed, just regular people coming in off the street. Now, this one man said, look, there are ways to combat this. And he gave an example, which I thought was very interesting. He said, when there's going to be one of these community things where the Muslims are going to say how mistreated they are in America and all that, he said, I and a few other people, we walk in to this meeting about 10 minutes before it starts with some bulletins. And it will say, let's discuss the persecution of Christians in Islamic countries. And he said, we pass them out to everybody. We don't say one word. And about that time, the heads of the Islamic meeting, they start screaming and yelling and throw us out. We haven't said a word, but what's going to happen? Everybody's going to look at that bulletin that they got about what about the persecution of Christians in Islamic countries. And he said he's even succeeded in some places that they discontinued these kind of meetings because of that kind of thing. And I think activists, Christians can do the godly thing, and yet we've got to begin to work, and not only to pray, but to pray and work and warn, or else this thing is going to take over America.
You raise a point that's always worth highlighting. And it's the sort of two faces of Islam, when you're a minority and when you're a majority.
Yes, yes.
And when they're a minority, they're always, you know, they're the sheep, everyone is oppressing us, we need religious freedom and so on and so forth. The minute they're the majority, that discussion ends. There's only one religion, there's only one truth, and anyone who disagrees, he's done.
Yes.
And that's something that's worth emphasizing at any time.
How does Islam affect your community? You're an Israeli Arab preaching the gospel in Israel. Is Islam causing any problems in the democracy of Israel?
In general, in Israel, we are in an oasis of peace. We have religious freedom. We have all rights. So we do not face any persecution from the Muslims in northern Israel because they are restricted. Israel is a strong government. I believe America has to do the same. They have to remove the facade from the face of Islam and expose the true nature of Islam.
Well, thank you, Yosef and Mati, for being with me today. This is all the time we have for today's Israel Frontline. Thank you for watching. I hope this series about Islam gave you insight and understanding, and that you will join all of us in prayer and action for the salvation of the Muslim people. For more information concerning the fundamentals of the Islamic religion and what you can do to help prevent its continuing spread in America, order my new book, The Secret Radical Islamic Plot to Conquer America, together with a DVD of this series of 4 episodes on Islam as Muhammad taught it. I also encourage you to sign up to receive our free monthly Maoz Israel report straight from Israel. In it, I write about events happening in Israel and the Middle East from an Israeli Messianic Jewish point of view. My purpose is to keep Christians and Messianic Jews abreast of what is really happening, news you will not see or hear in the mainstream media. On behalf of our team and myself, blessings and shalom from Tel Aviv.
The Bible is full of promises to the Jewish people, promises of physical and spiritual restoration. But how do these promises relate to today's reality in Israel and the Middle East? In addition to the Israeli side of the story, the Maoz Israel report ties in the biblical perspective with what is happening in the region.
Subscribe to receive this free publication at maozisrael.org/signup. We will also send you the digital version of Ari's book, To the Jew First, when you sign up.